pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Why's That? And yeah, I know, I'm kind of throwing away the 2.0 away from the title, even though, well, it's still gonna appear on the artwork that I have associated with this. And it's simply because this is the second season of it, so it probably only made sense to have that part done. But anyways, this one right here is question number 48, and I'm actually pretty excited to talk a lot about this because, after all, there has been a lot of people out there who have had a lot of, reactions to my sudden disappearance from Twitter. Or in the ways of, my first account disappearing from Twitter, that is. So you know what? Right now, about 8 months after that incident took place, I feel like it's only appropriate for me to start talking a few things about, my Twitter itself. Because, simply put, someone's asking me a question about my popularity amongst it. The question down here says, why is that you've become popular amongst other internet celebrities? And now, let me just go ahead and get a little bit of a clarification here. I'm really not as popular because, after all, my follower count has never been on par with most other celebrities out there, such as Tom Holland, or Richard Warbitz, or Rob Paulson, or probably even Miss Oliver and Blossom. And by which I mean William Grubb. The same person, of course, who was basically one of my favorite YouTubers of all time. But anyways, of course my follower count may not actually be similar in ways to how other people's are, because I've never even had 100,000 followers. The best I've had so far is around 30,000. But in pretty much going through this little perspective here where my popularity probably isn't going to be as good as it used to be, because, after all, the Gain Tweet community only goes so far before apparently it turns to chaos. I mean, if there's one lesson that I might as well take in from this, it's that, I should never be so naive enough to think that, Twitter, of course, could just simply have me removed from their platform. But, of course, the main thing about it is that, most of the time whenever I'm associated with the Twitter Gain Tweet community, it doesn't really involve anything relative to any harmful or awful acts or anything that ever occurs based on, something that's worth banning from the internet. But apparently Twitter doesn't want to ever argue with me about that. I try to clarify the truth to them many times, actually, because, after all my account is doing is racking up followers simply because of my influence towards the Gain Tweet community. And of course, some people have actually become very jealous of my work. And if you don't recall one time where I've talked about the story of, my Twitter account becoming suspended and, this would eventually lead to the war between myself and Twitter, because, after all, 2 hackers on Twitter had found that I was racking a lot of followers back then. Hundreds of them. And eventually thousands. But by February of 2016 was where some idiots thought that they could be funny and try to shut down my account forever. Or at least get it sabotaged to the point where Twitter would think that I'm all of a sudden playing these awful games to which that I pretty much lie to people all the time and eventually cause a lot of havoc all over the place and putting other people's lives in endangerment. I mean, the list goes on at this point. There's a lot of reasons why Twitter thought that I was pretty much the bad guy here, but no, it never was me to begin with. It was those two. And I know it's been more than 4 years, 4.5 at this point, since I first talked about this. But that's only because that right there was pretty much the turning point that Twitter thought I was committing unlawful actions on the internet where everybody could see them, and they would pretty much assume the worst. But the worst is really when Twitter all of a sudden wants to randomly attack my account for no reason. That right there, it's just, I'm just trying my best not to use any of those words. Really trying not to use any of those words now. Because at 21, I figured lots of stuff could happen at this point. But yeah, 4.5 years have passed. The first time I talked about this story was, of course, not long after it actually happened. My Twitter account ended up getting suspended until I could provide them actual legal info, which I actually had back then. But then eventually, February 2016 was a time where I had an iPhone, which I tried to upgrade at one point. And then it pretty much failed. So I couldn't use it anymore. So we pretty much had to struggle for not even a year after that happened. But I was finally able to pick up another phone by August of 2016. 6 months after that happened. My Twitter account got suspended by a few hackers who tried to make Twitter think that I was a bad guy here. And in reality, it was them. I was able to identify their usernames really quickly by the time I was able to log back onto Twitter because, after all, somehow they appeared in my, recommendations, and they also appeared on my notifications tab. So I was able to quickly identify both of them and start to report them. No joke. They both had a lot of problems on them, and I was able to identify a lot of these because some people have actually known them for doing some of this stuff, but Twitter's not done anything about it. But thankfully, because of what I witnessed throughout most of the year 2016, that was how they both got permanently banned. And that's the end of it, pretty much. But you know what, though? Especially after 2016 was where my account got a whole lot better. Hundreds of followers started to come back in, but eventually, it did not get so well. Because by spring of 2017 was where I lost more than half of all of my followers. But this, however, would be the epiphany for me to try something else on Twitter, and eventually that's where I found the GameTweet community. A few people from that community started to follow me and recommend me a few ideas on how to promote my content. And simply put, I obliged with them. I was able to retweet and like a lot of their content, and eventually it started to pay off at an exponential rate. Hundreds of followers started to come in, and eventually thousands, all over again. Just like what happened before February of 2016. But this time it was even better. Because not only was I past 1,000 followers, I was on the route to 2,000 followers really quickly. And by the end of 2017, I had a pretty good amount of followers to pretty much start off with. More than 3,000, then 4,000. But then, of course, it got even better as I went. I continuously retweeted, liked, and even commented on other GameTweet users' tweets. And that, of course, was how I managed to get more than 15,000 by the time I graduated high school in June of 2018. And it still got even better from then on out, because eventually I was able to reach 20,000 followers, then 25,000, and then I got up to around 29,000 followers by fall. Yeah. It's that crazy considering how much content I could simply promote, and all of a sudden it would pay off at a huge exponential rate like that. So, I was just tearing up a bit from all of these joyful reactions. I was simply witnessing a lot of new people look at my content, and I was getting a lot of positive feedback from them, and more importantly, there was a lot of good influence that was coming from this community. So, there was no reason for Twitter to want to have to attack my account, or anyone's account for that matter. I could probably see where some people are going with this, because I have actually talked with quite a few people on this matter. A lot of followers have actually assumed that it had something to do with spam. And to that I say, spam? what kind of world allows spam anyways? And it's not like I'm even trying to find out exactly why Twitter would like think that I'm spamming or something like that. That cannot be true. It cannot be. No, it cannot be. Gain tweets, are they actually a trap? Do they come at a price or something? Because how else do you think that my Twitter account, or KFN 1.0, all that time had gotten suspended, locked, or limited a lot of times? I mean, the whole year of 2018 was pretty much that's some sort of problem. But you know what though? It didn't get any better, because 2019, of course, was where it also happened even more, but at least they were a lot more temporary compared to most others. I mean, I always thought that I was going to get banned at one point, and then I'd have to start all my work all over again. Well, you know what? That was a nightmare that actually became real. It was something in my life I never thought would come to, but apparently Twitter thought otherwise. Because on December 23rd, 2019, KFN 1.0 had been deactivated permanently. It was all gone by New Year's Day 2020. And the reason for that was well, because around the start of December 2019, I ended up getting a pretty strong message from Twitter themselves. After all this time that I have spent with them, trying to deal with them, trying to work things out with them, based on all of this aggression and unprovoked acts that they're putting against me, because they think I'm, once again, the bad guy. But no, 2 hackers got my account suspended until I was able to get a new phone and eventually unlock that account and get those 2 banned. But then all of a sudden Twitter somehow acts like they were right this whole time, and they had only let me go because, well, I was able to convince them that they were the bad guys. I mean, they're clearly not bad guys. They definitely were. How else do you think they would have hacked and gotten my info and tried to do all that kind of stuff to try to get me banned? But you know what? It has already been around 8 months since KFN 1.0 had bit the dust completely and had vanished from existence. But to honor it, I was able to grab a lot of photos from the media archive that was on KFN 1.0. And KFN 2.0 currently has pretty much a large fraction of all the photos and videos that I was able to take of, well, a lot of things that I've had uploaded to KFN 1.0. But you know what though? Things have actually gotten a lot better now. Twitter is no longer deciding to attack my account. That's the best thing about it that I can tell you. It was just so stupid. They had to pull both of my accounts and prevent me from getting to them until I made a decision. I don't know if I could forgive them for anything like this. But you know what though? This was a long thread that I pretty much just had to talk a lot about, but that's only because this stuff here was just not out of the ordinary. It was, simply put, just a whole lot different than you could possibly ever think. But this was a true story that was very lengthy, yet it had a lot behind it. Worth remembering. But if you want to see more go down on my channel, then well, make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.